want to thank our sponsors who help each week put out the content for these podcasts as we invite different people from throughout the community to tell their story. So sincerely, Soul Source Restoration. Check them out, soulsourcerestoration.com. If you ever have an issue with water damage, mold, fire damage, they're there to help. It's a local Cranston company that's supporting not only this podcast, but people every day throughout the community. Check them out. Thank you for our sponsor. I'd like to welcome everyone back to another episode of the Park Podcast here at the Historic Park Theater and Event Center in Cranston, Rhode Island. I'm with my friend who also happens to be the mayor of the city of Cranston, but before that, he was a coach, he was an athletic director, he was kind of just a parent that really kind of just mentored me through the process. I remember back when my mom was going through cancer and I was in high school and I was kind of just angry at the world, and I would get called into your office at being the athletic director, and I can't forget those moments that you helped mentor me through some of the most difficult times in my life. So I want to start off by thanking you for that. I don't know if you remember those days.
I do, and more so I was very close with your dad. We went through different high schools, but were involved in athletics. And once I knew that you were his son, then I kind of took you under my wing a little bit and tried to help you through the process.
So your entire life you've been a coach, you've been a director, and how do you kind of apply those principles now in your leadership style next door?
Well, the big thing as a coach is problem solving, working as a team approach to try to accomplish a goal. And there's not much difference between being a leader of a college athletic program, being a leader of the entire city's athletic program, or being a leader for the city. You represent obviously 88,000 people in the city, and you have to understand that every person that calls you or comes in to see you has an important message. So I have to treat everything like it's real important.
Sure.
And that's the approach that I've tried to take. As a coach, you want to surround yourself with good people, both character-wise and talent-wise, and I think I've done that with my staff that I've put together. In the transition, we kept some people, but we brought in an inner circle of people that were very talented in the things that they do. Constituent affairs, finances, just having a vision that we have for the city of Cranston. And the people that I've brought in with me seem to have that same type of approach, that it's people first, it's not us, it's what can we do to make Cranston a better place and what's best for the city.
Amen. I was fortunate enough prior to this adventure serving with you on the city council, so I got to hear a lot of your innovative ideas through that experience of 2 terms, and kind of just your style within that. Obviously, as a mentor of mine growing up, kind of to sit next to you and also co-lead a city, it was great to see the way that you would try to bring people together for a vote or unify a council of 9 different people who all have 9 different perspectives, and we're all molded 9 different ways growing up. And I think probably your life experiences as a coach probably helped in that service aspect in doing so.
Absolutely, Ed. I mean, people ask me what party I'm with. They ask me that all the time, and I say I'm a moderate, common-sense Republican. I do whatever is best for the city and the people of Cranston. I find that in politics, which I'm not very fond of, a lot of people are in it for their own ego, their own self-interest. And I mean, I retired after 37 years of education, 40 years of coaching at the college. In the year 2015, I was done. And former Mayor Trafficante and former Mayor Alan Fung, Alan was term limited, and they approached me about doing this. And I hesitated. I'm going to be honest with you. I had a family. I had a wife that was sick, and I really needed to go on vacation, clear my head, try to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And then obviously 5 months later my wife passed away, and I really realized that I needed something to make me get up every day, to have a purpose in life, to take some of the things that I wanted to do with my vision. You know me as well as anybody. I'm a big Walt Disney guy.
Sure.
And
me too.
In fact, I had my house down at Walt Disney, and He said, sometimes it's fun to do the impossible.
Amen.
That's one of the great quotes of Walt Disney. And I actually watched them when they were building it, living and coaching down in Florida during the summer. And I was always amazed at how he could take something that was literally swampland and make it something that everybody in the world wanted to come and see.
Sure.
So that type of vision was kind of ingrained in me, and that's what I think I brought to the city of Cranston. Not only the leadership skills, but the ability to see things. And I've used Robert Kennedy's quote a lot. Some people see things that never were and say why. I see things that never were and say why not. Why not Cranston?
Why not?
Why can't we reopen the Park Theater?
Yeah.
Why can't we build a new Knightsville and have dinner outside?
Yeah.
And build a new fountain and a new gazebo? Why can't we redo Parkview? Some way down the road, maybe we can build a new ice rink. Maybe we can build new schools like we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Or bring in a company like Costco or somebody like Topgolf that wants to come because Cranston's a safe city. It's centrally located in the state. I call Cranston the heart of Rhode Island. It's right in the middle. Just look at the map, and every major highway cuts right through us. And we have good schools, good neighbors, safe city. People want to come here, and we have to give them the things that they want to live in a nice city.
I agree. You touched on pretty much everything that you do want in a good city, right? Education, community, feeling safe, a vision for forward progress. And, I like the vision that I've been fortunate enough to see that you're already starting to develop throughout this entire city, not just on the west side, not just on the east side, right here on Roth Square. Everywhere throughout this city, we're seeing gradual improvements, but often people want to see it immediate, right? You kind of came into office during, I would say, the hardest times in the history of public service, right? Everyone hates, like you said earlier, politicians right now. There is nothing right that anyone can do because of, well, everyone just inherited and had to endure over the last 2 years of a pandemic. Obviously, we know we have declining revenues. There's solutions that have to be made through hard cuts every day to continue to balance a budget and progress forward. So how do you balance that visionary spirit while also being financially prudent and understanding kind of where the world's at, while also making a plan to progress forward by driving revenue, like you just said?
Yeah. Again, we've been fortunate to bring in some real highly talented financial people. Even my chief of staff is a CPA, Tony Moretti. And we sit down almost on a weekly basis and try to figure out what are our needs, what can we afford, where can we cut spending, where do we need to do some really hard cuts. And that's the difficult part of being a leader. When you have to, we were looking at a goal of 25 layoffs. But what we ended up doing was we offered incentives for people that were at the latter stages of their career. We offered some incentives for them to retire. So rather than laying off 25, we ended up laying off 3. We had 22 people took the early retirement. And the 3 people that left us, we got jobs in either other cities. We called people in Smithfield. One landed there. We called the school department over here. So it wasn't like we just got rid of 25 people.
Sure.
We had some layoffs that got new jobs, and we had a pretty good crew of people that were willing to retire, take their pension, and move on.
Yeah.
And that saved the city about $1.2 million by making that move. And
not easy, I imagine.
No, it was very, very much a sleepless week.
Yeah.
And again, I'm always concerned about people's households. People have families, they have kids. There's concerns there, but you have to do what's best for the city. And if I keep that in mind, even when I was sworn in, it was the middle of COVID. And the governor called us up and said, here's the testing kits, figure it out, keep Cranston safe. And we immediately started doing that. And one of the things I was most happy with was working in collaboration with Governor McKee to get the testing kits, to set up our senior center, to work with our public health inspector, public safety inspector, who happens to be our new fire chief, Jim Warren, and we got the entire city vaccinated. One of the things I really wanted, though, was to make sure that the teachers were vaccinated. Being a former teacher, I convinced the governor to make that a priority statewide, and he listened to me, and that's what we did. He sent us maybe 10,000 extra vaccines, and the very next week we brought all the teachers in and had them vaccinated along with the elderly population. Then eventually we set up vaccinations in the schools themselves and got the kids vaccinated. So it was nice to be able to cross over the aisles and work with the governor to make something safer for the city of Cranston.
Yeah, and for a while I remember during that, which is, you're touching on some great points of we're in some divisive times, right? Democrat, Republican, nationwide fighting, but to see two people from different sides of the aisle kind of communicate and find solutions together during those divisive times rapidly, because there was no right moves and wrong moves. We were kind of all learning together through COVID, right?
Sure,
we were
absolutely.
just taking the information and trying to make the most effective decisions we could at a rapid pace to make sure we were protecting our communities and opening the doors back up so I could be sitting here with you without a mask on, having a conversation, driving small businesses again. And one of the great things that I love about your leadership style is that ability, probably from coaching and just being that empathetic soul that you are, that I know you to be prior to politics, of finding compromise through difficult situations, regardless of party, by that people-led first approach, right?
Yeah, well, I think it's important to set that example. I was very unhappy with the way the election season went, to see the negative ads and how people attacked each other's weaknesses. And I was proud of the fact that when I ran for mayor, there was a headline in the Boston Globe that said something unusual is happening in the city of Cranston. The two mayoral candidates are getting along.
Sure.
And even though Maria Bucci, who was my opponent, we had some differences of opinion on certain things, the bottom line was we respected each other. The fact that we were both running for an office, that was pretty important, and that we were able to convince the voters that we were going to do what was in the best interest of the city. And I kind of carried that on. I always felt that after a game, win or lose, you should always respect your opponent.
Sure.
I had a motto with my coaching days of play hard, respect the game, and be on time. And I think the kids were always laughing, but if you have kids that played for me 20 years ago, respecting the game is also respecting your opponent.
Yeah.
And last week, after the election was over, I sent messages to every person that ran on the council and congratulated them if they won, and extended a hand to those that lost, telling them, you were in the race. You did more than what most people would do. No different than shaking hands with your opponent after an event.
Yeah.
And right after that, I think some of the council people appreciated that. They saw another side of me that maybe they didn't expect.
Yeah.
I talked to people at the state and federal level. The governor, I sent him a congratulatory note, and at the same time I talked with my good friend Alan Fung, after he lost, and tried to console him, because it was a very tough race.
Sure.
And then I sent a message to Magazina, because that's what's going to be good for the city of Cranston.
Of course.
Now that he's a sitting congressman, just like Jim Langevin was, I need to be able to work with those people in Washington to get grants and aid to come to our city.
Of course, build those bridges. Yeah. So 2 years now, midterms elections are over. We just spoke on that. And you've probably learned a tremendous amount. I mean, there's got to be a learning curve of, Alan was fortunate enough to serve for 12 years, so he kind of understood that office. Right now that you're 2 years in and you kind of really understand the ins and outs of being mayor, I know we've had conversations on this. Some things are out of your control, but what are some forward-thinking solutions you'd like to kind of really focus in on here during your next 2 years?
Yeah, I think that, Eddie, you brought up a good point. When you first walk in, it's not like you go to college and take a course on how to be a mayor.
Sure.
So you have to live on your life experiences, rely on the people that you surround yourself with. I wish I had more knowledge and understanding of the budget and the process of the budget. And I relied on some people to tell me some things about it. But I think I would have done a better job of that going around the next time. And since then, I've taken more of a personal approach to it. I meet with finance directors and meet with my staff, and I pretty much know what the budget is inside and out. Trying to explain that to the public
Sure.
sometimes is a difficult task.
Sure.
Because you get accused of overspending, you get accused of reckless spending, and sometimes people just don't know the inner workings of government.
Sure.
I've described it as trying to turn around the Queen Mary in the middle of the Patuxent River.
Yeah.
That's how government works.
Yeah.
It's slow, it's methodical, it has levels of bureaucracy in it that take time
Yep.
to get things accomplished. And unfortunately, when you're short money and you have to raise taxes, people have to understand that taxes may be a bad word when you first hear it, but it pays for the things that we have, and I call them quality of life issues. Now, we have a safe city. You know, we don't have graffiti because we take care of it right away.
Yeah.
We redo our streets. We're building new schools. That takes money.
Sure.
You know, and personally, we see our own households going up 8, 9, almost 10% this year
Yeah.
with the high rate of inflation. Well, the city is like our house, and there's a high rate of inflation affecting us, where I have to tell for example, our policemen, you know, let's not keep the cars driving all the time. Let's park and watch instead of driving.
Yeah.
Let's do runs from our fire department that when we get a call, we're going to go to it, obviously, for public safety reasons, but let's not overextend it so we're saving. You know, we had to go out and get a new class of firemen this year, and we still need more. We need another class. So that has an effect on overtime budgets, which lead to some of the inflation that we have. But there's a lot of things that go on in the city, whether it's teacher contracts, personnel contracts, fire department, police, city workers. Everybody wants a cost of living raise.
Sure.
Well, when the cost of living goes up 8% in 1 year, you're not going to get an 8% raise.
Yeah.
You'd be lucky if you get a 2% raise. So, and that's one of my jobs, is to work out that balance, to make sure that people are still paid for the job that they do, but keep the city and the quality of life in the city at a high level.
Yeah. Yeah. Which isn't easy.
No, it's not. I'm a big believer in infrastructure. If you look at, for example, Ward 2 between Rolfe Street, the lighting, and this was a vision that I had with a friend of mine, Paul McCauley, who's now my deputy chief. He was a Democratic member of the city council when we were councilmen together.
Yeah, I remember.
He had an idea, and we collaborated and talked about it.
Here we are.
And here we are. It came to fruition.
And it looks great.
And thank you. And what I see is nights when, for example, the Park Theater is filled for an event, I see walking traffic up and down Rolfe Street, going to Batola's and going to the different restaurants on the street.
It's great getting that call, Mayor, from Batola saying, do you have a show tonight? Like, we sell out, you know, when you have a show night. And the economic development from, obviously, this milestone, this 98-year-old theater that we're sitting in, that was closed for a couple of years, even during COVID. It's happening, right? It's maybe never as fast as we want it to be, or even you from a leadership style from the mayor, but it takes a collective community effort to continue to keep growing.
Sure.
And communication, right? And it seems like, from the outside looking in now, you know, I'm pretty proud of you, because it's a lot of those things that we talked about in council are maybe not as fast as you wanted, because there is a learning curve and there's that declining revenue and all those things that we talked about that are out of your control, but they're starting. Knightsville you took on, and all the projects that you wanted to bring to fruition are starting to come to life. So I'm really excited to see what the next 2 years produces, now that you can kind of go on offense versus playing, I think, defense when you're kind of first learning from a coach reference, right?
Yeah, we've had our share of controversies. Mulligan's Island was very controversial.
Yeah.
And they wanted to put some big box stores in up there. And I said it's either going to be housing or open space and recreation. So, you know, we had to deal with some lawsuits when they wanted to put Costco over there. And I stood my ground. And again, that was not for me, but it was for the people that live in that area.
Sure, sure.
You know, the Oak Hill Terrace, Garden City in particular. There were some concerns over there, and we have since started building Top Golf over on the
Very
Chapel
exciting.
View side, and then Garden City itself is a gem. I work very closely with Joe Katsuya over there, and Joe does a tremendous job with keeping us advanced in terms of what new stores are coming in,
Yeah.
like Lululemon's moving, another store's moving into their spot, and we've built up Garden City to be the premier showcase in the state.
Sure.
People come there, they want to come there, and on top of that, they go to dinner
Yeah.
at Tavern in the Square and the different restaurants.
Which
that
took
are-
time. 12, 14 years ago, it was half empty, right?
did,
And, I mean, that
yeah.
just shows the direction of what Cranston is going. I know I couldn't even find a house here. I was bidding $50,000-$60,000 when we were renting, over asking price, and
Sure.
I think that shows exactly what you're saying is people want to live in Cranston.
They
you know,
do.
and it's from
They do.
leadership, and it's from what we're building here for good education and safety and all the. But like you said, it costs money, right? So how do you keep driving money into a city to continue to keep scaling and growing? It takes time.
Well, it's just like your own neighborhood. You want your next door neighbors' houses to be as nice and neat as yours, so
Sure.
they take care of their property.
Yeah.
And as a result, everybody's value goes up. So I've become good friends with the mayor of Warwick,
Yeah.
and we take care of everything on that side of Cranston and Warwick. And most recently, I met with Mayor-elect Brett Smiley in Providence. We've had some issues over there with loud music in the park and ATVs, and we had a great 2-hour session where we sat and talked and had lunch together. And we're willing to work with each other to make sure that that portion of our city is protected. So it's not just us doing it. Even at the national level, Jim Langevin and Senator Jack Reed have been very, very important to us in, for example, building Knightsville.
Mm-hmm.
Governor McKee has stepped up and said that he's willing to help us with some of the financing for putting the lights and the street lights in that we want to do over there.
Excellent.
So it's a matter of working across the aisles, working with other people. That's the team building approach. And
So it doesn't all come out from the Cranston taxpayer.
it doesn't come from Cranston.
Yeah.
No, as a matter of fact, the pocket park that we're building, which is phase 1 in Knightsville, is going to include a new water fountain, a new pergola as an entrance, and a brand new gazebo that's handicapped accessible with some bocce courts and kind of a bandstand area.
Incredible.
Not one red cent comes from Cranston taxpayers. The whole thing comes from grant money, either CBDG money or federal grant money. Even Speaker Shikachi pitched in a $10,000 grant to help us purchase the new gazebo.
Incredible.
So it's a matter of getting all those other pieces together and putting the puzzle together.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I know Budlawn Pool has been a big topic of your time here on council. Obviously, you inherited that issue of a lot of damage in that pool prior to becoming mayor, and with being closed through the pandemic.
Sure.
Do you have any discussions or a vision where you'd like to go with that, or do you think that's kind of just ongoing as you're continuing to find costs and things of that nature?
Well, it's funny you mention that, Ed, because behind the scenes, a lot of things have to get done before they become public.
Sure.
And I've been working with the city council, keeping them updated almost on a monthly basis as to where we stand with that project. This past Friday, the architectural firm of Secosha, which is over near Cranston Stadium,
Yep.
came in and gave us the rendering of the ideas of how I wanted it to look when it was completed. Well, those drawings came in. I do have them, and I will show them to you right after this is over. But what we decided to do was to create areas not just for swimming, but for families, where they could come in. And for example, on one end, you're going to have 2 pickleball courts. Right next to that is going to be a kind of a tavern-style enclosure with picnic tables for families to have lunch.
Awesome.
On the middle side is going to be a brand new pool. It's not going to be the same size pool that we have there now, but it's going to be comparable to the size of the pools in all of the areas in the city of Providence.
That's great.
And if you looked at Mickey Stevens, for example, it'll be that size of a pool over in Warwick. And then on the front entrance, we're going to redo the bathhouses. We're going to keep the existing building, but renovate the bathhouses. And at the front part of this, like I call it, 3 sections. The front section is going to be a brand new splash pad, a huge splash pad.
Love it.
So you're going to get little kids running around the splash pad, older kids, as well as handicapped accessible ramps going into a new pool, which will be no higher than 5 feet high. And then on the back end, you'll have adults playing pickleball, and you'll have families having their picnics over on the tables.
True community center. I like it.
It's absolutely going to be a gem for our city. I know we did some research. When it was last open, we averaged about 100 families from Cranston a year. So we estimated about 300 people used it.
Yeah.
We would expect that on a daily basis with this new system that we're putting in.
I love it.
And when you see it, I'm sure you'll have the same idea.
I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to see it. You spoke on working with the council, and I think probably you being a councilman prior helps you merge those relationships, communicating what they want to see in their ward, what the people actually want to see, working with Councilman Donegan on the splash pad or Councilman Papalaskis on the Knightsville gazebo area in his ward, kind of having those direct one-on-ones with each department, like you're doing with your department head, just continuing to improve communication like I would do in a small business or any ecosystem that I'm running. As you can continue to communicate better and better and better, you become more effective, I imagine, in your leadership style.
Well, all of the things that we're doing, all of the projects are shared with the council people in the area. For example, before the Gatsby parade this summer, we spent 3 months working with Councilwoman Vargas, and we redid that entire section from the Shriners Hall.
Looks beautiful.
All the way down to the bridge. All new lighting, all new sidewalks, cleaned up crosswalks, and brand new streets. So when we got to the 250th anniversary for the Gatsby Parade, the Cranston side looked unbelievable, and people were complimenting us. And again, more people go down there now. I call it my Main Street concept.
Sure.
You know, Bagel Express is booming, Boster is booming, and all of the stores that are in that area are thankful that we did that. You go over to Bain Middle School, where we just completed the drawings, and we should start any day now on a splash pad that will be ready for next summer for the kids in Ward 3. I keep Councilman Donegan updated on that. He's aware of where we're going, and he's got photos of what we're going to do. And again, that program got delayed a little bit because initially we wanted to put it in the playground at Stadium School. And some of the neighbors opposed it over there. They didn't want the traffic, they didn't want flooding and et cetera. So we had to rethink it and move it to another spot.
Sure.
So that's why that got delayed this year. As far as the pool itself at Budlong, we've spent a lot of time working in Ward 2 since I've been in office. Between Rolfe Street, if you go behind City Hall, from High School Ave all the way down to the Friendly Community, that's all Ward 2. Every single street over there has been repaved. So we've done stuff in Ward 1, Ward 2, Ward 3 we're doing over in with the splash pad. We're also working with the Historical Society to do some work on the Sprague Mansion. We'd like to help them clean that up a little bit. Then you go over to Ward 5, and we're redoing Knightsville right now. And you look at Ward 6, Garden City is second to none. So we've touched on a little bit of everything. And one of our new gems is we wanted to take Cranston Stadium and have the same type of place for the kids on the western side of the city. So Cranston West is now a full stadium. And it looks beautiful for night games over there. It's great seeing
games over there. Like just the amount of work we've all collectively put in on revitalizing that area, and the alumni being a part of that. And one of my proudest moments too, if you don't mind me interjecting, was prom. You know, it's just kind of coming to you and saying, these kids don't have a voice. You know, can we make this happen? Can we find solutions during a pandemic to find a way where these kids can celebrate together, and to do it outside on that turf stadium, which you just spoke on, and to see the smiles of those kids. And then to see it kind of roll out statewide, with us being an example here in Cranston, and get the support on the state level. I mean, that's the kind of leader that I've been fortunate enough to see, not only when you've been serving here in office in city council or as a mayor, but since I was a kid that I looked up to in that room as we started this conversation with, as that mentor, kind of just telling me how life is, you know, and being honest with me and being transparent and communicating effectively, and kind of giving me a path to grow.
And those are the nice parts about my job. I remember sitting on the stage at the stadium during the high school graduation and almost had a tear come to my eyes because of how proud I felt that we could accomplish this by just taking it outside. Again, sometimes you have to think out of the box. The night we were over there and you and I were both on that dance floor
Sure.
for that Cranston West prom,
Sure.
the kids had a great time.
Yep.
Probably something they never would have experienced if we didn't think outside the box
Yep.
and collaborate to get it done.
Yep.
Same thing with Jimmy Birchfield and Rain running that boxing event.
That was great too. Yeah.
We had the city needed to get outside after a couple of years of COVID,
Yep.
and I think we accomplished that.
I agree, and I think we moved a lot of other communities forward too by laying the groundwork first here on a lot of those big initiatives. So
Sure.
yeah, well, I appreciate you having you here today, Mayor. Is there anything else you want to talk about that the city of Cranston should know about, or do you?
Well, I'm glad the silly season is over. The
Yeah.
elections are done.
Sure, sure.
All those signs that were littering our city, most of them are gone right now.
Yeah.
And I'd like to put in some new ordinances about signage.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's a First Amendment conflict with it, but I think people need to make sure that they put them up and take them down immediately.
Sure.
Don't put them out there on private property. Don't put them on public property where you just throw them out there and hope people see them.
Yeah.
I think we need to clean that up a little bit. I would like to educate the public a little bit about one problem we had during the summertime, which was a rat infestation.
Sure.
That was a big problem for us. I think we handled it pretty well. But they need to understand that it wasn't just a Cranston problem.
Sure.
This was a COVID-related problem. For example, we spent up to 25% more trash hauled to the landfill.
Yeah.
And then that's indicated in a $1.2 million increase in our trash haul.
Because people were staying home. Yeah.
People were staying home.
Yeah.
And as a result, they were overflowing in their trash barrels.
Sure.
They weren't putting the covers down. And they were using bird feeders because they were staying home. And as a result, we were, through our own human nature, creating places and resources for the rats to populate. And I'm hoping that next year, and we put something on the website, we tried to educate them that way, but I think next year we've got to do a better job after the winter to let them know that this could be a problem if
Sure.
we don't address it. I know Buddy Cianci used to have a famous quote, said, "Cover your can."
Yeah.
Well, I personally cover mine and put a brick on top of it.
Sure.
I think if everybody in the city did that, including the restaurants and the stores, don't overflow the containers,
Yep.
we're not going to give these creatures the resources.
Sure.
So we have to think a little bit better on
And that's probably
protecting.
just one example of many that you can't forecast in a budget, right? You can't forecast the $1.2 million overage because of COVID. So, that's just probably one example of many that you inherited going into a new budget, right?
Yeah, well, again, as we get into the winter, we've already had staff meetings in preparation. I've made it very clear to our workers, whether they're private or public workers for the city, that any snowstorm will be done curb to curb, and we have to enforce that. We have to make sure that people keep their cars off the road when it snows out, but you can't predict a snowstorm.
Sure.
Last year we had 8 of them, and they were all on the weekends for some reason. So we had the opportunity where people weren't on the road all day long, and I think we did a pretty good job of clearing the streets last year. We had very few complaints, and as soon as they did call, both myself and my deputy chief of staff, Paul McCauley, would hop into a van
Yeah.
or a new truck, and we'd go out and plow the streets together.
You know what I like that you did too, and that was really cool to see that you're leading by example. But also like when you would make the ban a little bit later, so that we could still drive revenue from a small business
Absolutely.
perspective, and then do the ban after said 8 o'clock hour, 9 o'clock hour, so we could still actually get some restaurant customers and keep some revenue driving when we desperately
Absolutely.
need it. So
Yeah, again, we take a lot of things into concern: public safety, schools, small businesses.
Sure.
And again, the weather conditions, we do have some issues with homeless populations that we have to address.
yeah,
And I've been working with the governor on that up at the Harrington Hall area. Councilman Riley has stepped up, and Councilwoman Renzulli has helped us on that cause to make public awareness as to how much we do already, in our pilot program, which is payment in lieu of taxes.
Yeah.
We don't get a heck of a lot of money to send police or rescues over to the prison.
Sure.
But because it's in our city, we're obligated to do it. So I've been working with the governor on that issue. Obviously, the homeless issue, I'm concerned about it because we don't want residents out during the winter.
Sure.
So we're trying to help with that type of issue. And we do a good job, I think, with the Red Cross and CCAP, trying to house families. I have personally found housing for people that I didn't even know from other communities,
Yep.
and got them into houses. And not to publicize it, but just to say that there's a certain amount of compassion that we have for people that don't have houses.
Yeah.
They're not all drug addicts and alcoholics.
Sure.
There are families out there that need housing, and it's the government's duty to try to reach out and help them.
We just did our annual turkey dinner for the homeless, and to see kids that, young kids, 5, 4, I was at multiple times throughout that serving and giving experience crying because I would pull myself away, and it's out of their control, right? You're touching on,
Sure.
They're not all drug addicts, right? They're not all, if you can just rehab or put one person in the right place and see their life turn around, then possibilities are endless. And as we're going into the holiday season, I think we all have to be thinking of how we can uplift this community, how we can keep unifying everyone throughout this city, and giving someone a chance to kind of, I feel good when I give. I know you do too, right? But
Absolutely.
We did an important initiative even during COVID with the fire truck, when getting Santa around, and maybe
Sure.
that's something we could bring back again
Yeah,
this year.
I actually just talked to Councilman Poplaskis the other night about doing that again, and that's on the agenda.
Very cool.
Yeah, and I want to bring up another point too. I think as an administration, small business was very important to us. We're at a point right now in about 18 months where we've generated close to $300,000 in small grants given to each one of the small businesses throughout the city. Franklin Paulino, my economic development coordinator, goes out to those businesses, gives them the paperwork. We've worked with you on that.
Sure.
And this past week, we just gave out 4 grants of $10,000 each, and 6 more grants just came in that we're going to be passing out. So we're doing everything in our power to support small businesses, to make sure that part of that Take It Outside grant program
Sure.
is also the model that we use for our Main Street program. Take things outside. Cranston needs to get back to a normal life, not being closed inside the houses.
Yeah.
People want to get outside.
Yeah.
They want to do things with their kids in the community. And I think once they see what Rolfe Street brings to us, but also with the new pool and what Knightsville is going to be, people are going to be real happy with the direction the city's going.
I agree, Coach.
And we've maintained an AA plus bond rating.
What does that
So-
mean for those that?
Well, it basically gives us an ability to put a bond out there that if we want to build something new, like a school, that the interest rates, just like your house,
Yep.
if you have good credit, you can have a lower interest rate when
Yep.
you go to borrow. Well, the city has to have the same thing.
Yep.
So anytime you get up into a AA plus bond rating, you can go out and borrow $140 million to build 2 new schools at the lowest possible interest rate.
Yep.
Where if companies like Fitch that evaluate you on a yearly basis look at you and say, oh, that city's in trouble, then you're not going to be able to borrow the money at a lower rate.
Sure,
You'll
sure.
probably be able to get it, but it'll be more like 8, 9, 10% as
Yep.
opposed to 3% or 4%.
So to be at that rating in a post-pandemic world, it's pretty good.
Cranston's heading in the right direction.
Yeah.
We've got a 3-year plan that we've put together. Again, taxes are almost a necessity at point, but I can assure you they won't be the maximum. They'll be kept down into the 2 range. If we can get taxes every year on a yearly basis in that $100 to $150 range, we get new schools, we get new streets,
Sure.
we get public services and recreation. We've got some of the best facilities in the country.
And the only way not to do that is to drive revenue from a small business or from corporations, which has been difficult in pandemic, right? But I know that your team is recruiting every day, and we're starting to see the taxes that are going to be coming to kind of offset what obviously the average household is going to have to pay for that marginal increase.
Yeah, 3 years down the road, whether I'm still the mayor or whether somebody else is sitting in their seat, Cranston's going to be in great shape. But it's going to take us time to get there.
Sure.
We need, during the pandemic, the last 2 years, there was no brick and mortar going up.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Now there is. You
Yeah.
can see Topgolf. You can see eventually Costco.
Sure.
You're going to see something happen over at Mulligan's. You're seeing the revitalization of Knightsville. We have a big one coming up. Brady Sullivan has recently purchased the Cranston Printworks.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be a major contributor to the city tax base. The bowling alley down the street,
Yep.
the drawings are in to make those into high-rise apartments. That's going to generate $4 or $5 million a year in tax revenue.
Yep.
We continue to build. People want to move into the city of Cranston. They want nice things. It costs money. And in order to do that, we may have to tax for a little bit until we can get these brick and mortars on the books.
Sure. Sure.
And that's not too far off.
Yeah, I like it, Mayor. Well, I appreciate you being here today, Coach. I appreciate you vulnerably expressing your vision for the city, talking about kind of being accountable, which is a part of something that I try to do every day within my teams as we're growing in teams, kind of making sure everyone's being accountable on how they can grow and just continuing to lead, even though I know that you didn't have to, right? You gave us a little bit of your story, and as you're kind of at this chapter of your life, you still have a lot of knowledge and a lot to give, and I appreciate that investment that you're making day in and day out for the people of the city of Cranston. So thanks for being on today. Anything else you want to close?
And the future is not about us. The future is about the kids that
Amen.
are going into these new schools.
Yep.
I've got 4 grandchildren. They could be in our seat in 30 years.
Amen.
And we have to think down the road, what's the city of Cranston going to look like in 2030, 2040,
Sure.
2050?
Yep.
And that's less than 30 years down the road. 30 years ago, what were you thinking about?
Yeah, of course.
30 years ago, I was married with the kids and I was teaching.
Yeah.
Here it is 30 years later.
Yep.
Now I've got to think about these things and what's the future of the city. I remember when my youngest daughter went to UConn, they had a program up there called UConn 2020.
Yep.
The vision from 2010 to 2020, how are they going to redo the campus?
Yep.
And that always stuck with me, and I said, what do I want to do with the city of Cranston? Well, the first thing I want to do is use something that I used during the campaign. One Cranston, one heartbeat.
Amen.
It has to be one city.
Yeah.
It can't be east versus west, north versus south. We get this, they don't get that. It's not going to be that way under my
Cranston.
administration.
Yeah.
And I think I've proven that already in wards 1, 2, and 3, wards 4, 5, and 6. They know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
They see what we're doing to the city of Cranston. But we need to make it one city, one Cranston, one heartbeat.
Yep. Let's keep doing it. Thanks,
My
Mayor.
friend, thank you.
Thanks for being on today. Thank you for checking out another episode of the Park Podcast here with Mayor Ken Hopkins, and we appreciate the sponsor, Source Construction. Keep tuning in. You want to learn more, we'll hopefully have the mayor on back again, maybe in a year, to talk about all those ideas that he just talked about as we see them to fruition. So thank you all for checking us out.